and moves were made. Hands were shook, money exchanged hands, possibly drugs. But it was all good. It was all in the name of fantasy football.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dynasty. Like I said, we all see things differently.
Put it on his shirt.
I just drank what tasted like a root beer, but now I'm feeling kind of tipsy.
Ride that unicorn, my friend.
I was really going to do an awful Mexican accent, but I realized how mad I'd be at someone else for doing that. So, hi.
We all are very intrigued and very interested in what will happen this year.
It is 3:40 in the p.m. on Thursday, November 16th. I am Peter Livingston, host of the Dynasty podcast, a seasonal fantasy football podcast in which 12 friends enter, one leaves champion. We are in week 11 of our 14-week regular season schedule before we hit playoffs. So we are in the thick of it. I'm sorry for not having an episode come out on yesterday. So this is going to be about like a 2-part episode. Try and get it up as quickly as I can. We'll see what happens. I've been incredibly busy, but we had an action-packed week 10, not so much in the realm of competitive fantasy football games, but we had a lot of wheeling and dealing. I think I started something. I announced on the podcast last week that I would be selling, and that kind of opened the floodgates. I started selling off pieces of my team to other teams, which in then turn made other teams, it just domino effect. So we will be breaking down all of the trades. We will be breaking down all of the waiver wires and transactions. It's been an action-packed week, probably the most action-packed week. When we get down to the nitty-gritty, and it's typically a buy and sell environment, it's when we tend to see the most of our transactions. And this is probably the week. I mean, there might be another week or two where teams see the writing on the wall before they start shipping guys out that they aren't going to be keeping next year to other playoff contenders, or try and accrue some draft picks for next season. And we might have another 1 or 2 teams that might sell off a couple pieces, but for the most part, I think most of the selling has been done. So the damage has taken place, so to speak. And going forward, there are going to be some interesting scenarios in terms of matchups in this stretch. We had a couple teams sell that maybe we didn't. I know that I didn't quite think would sell right away. And we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm going to do a really quick recap of last week's games. Don't want to get into too much detail because we're already looking into week 11. Thursday night football is going tonight. We have the Tennessee Titans. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is some good fantasy potential there. When you look at where the potential would lie, it would definitely have to be in a couple players by the name of Le'Veon Bell, DeMarco Murray, of course. Running backs tend to get the preferential treatment on the short week. So if you are an owner of a running back in tonight's game, you have to like that. Unless, is it the Dolphins tonight? No, I don't think so. Not tonight. So let's go ahead and recap week 10 real quick. I'm not going to do a deep dive. Just going to pretty much go over the scores and how the games went out. So last week we had looks like we had one close game. We had one close game. And it led to Marco selling. It was Marco's against Keyser. It was really the only semi-close game. But we'll get into that one. I'm going to start with my game first since I'm at the top. Fighting Sponges against Bake Brie. The initial projected score for this game was a blistering 79-75 in favor of me. Pretty much a coin flip. I ended up winning 92-83, and Brian fell to 2-8, and I went to 4-6 on the year, still within striking distance of a miracle playoff push. Let's go ahead and look at the next game. Oh, just real quickly, we'll just touch on who performed really well. Mark Ingram had 3 rushing touchdowns for me, 131 yards rushing, so for 30 points. Then Alvin Kamara, 100 yards rushing with a touchdown and 30 yards receiving. Brienne, Atlanta defense, and Mason Crosby and Isaiah Crowell did a lot of the heavy lifting for her. The second game we'll get into is the Nate Silver Siths against the Golden Tate Warriors, which was an important game. Elliott was the dog in this. He was a slight dog, 88-98 in favor of Matthew. So Matthew was favored in this. Final score is 128-98. So Elliott with a little bit of an upset there, and all around pretty good performance from Elliott's team. Stafford with 22, Funchess with 21, Thielen with 22, McCaffrey with 17, Abdullah with 11, Matty with Brady dropping his 22, Tate with 15, Woods with 29, another monster game for him, and everybody else kind of fell off a little bit. So Elliott with a nice surprise victory right there. He had Cousins on the bench with 28 against Minnesota. I should get rid of my com real quick. So that hurt Matt's chances for coming back and making. He was one of the teams that ended up selling. We'll get into that in a little bit. Next game, it wasn't the handle. Marcos against Braggadocious, 1-1. Marcos, both teams 5-5 at the end of last week for the last game. 102-122 was the projected total. The final score was 101-99. Keyser edges out Marcos in what could have been an upset, but was not. The fallout game in starting the Pittsburgh offensive weapons backfired on the road in Indy. Antonio Brown with 4 points, Le'Veon Bell with 11. Not that that's a bad game, but then Melvin Gordon with 4 points. So Keyser's team pretty much took a dump. And then with Marcos, DeMarco Murray had his blow-up game. Solid flex performance from Joe Mixon. Gurlin, his kicker, got him 17 points. I mean, it was an incredibly close game, but nothing just seemed to... I don't know. You know, it's weird because both teams could have done better, but they didn't. It's just unfortunate for Marcos. He fell to 4-6. Matt goes to 7-3, and then Marcos was another one of those teams looking to sell. The next game we have was Fart Apocalypse against a team has no name, the number 1 team against the number 12 team. 96-79 was the original projection. 98-82 was the final. Robin takes down Pat to move to 8-2 on the year. Pat goes to 1-9. Goff with a monster game of 26 points. Devontae Adams with 15 points, and then Demaryius Thomas and Sterling Shepard, good games. And then Pat had Juju Smith-Schuster, who has another great game. Kenyon Drake with 15 points, and then Steven Gostkowski with 11. Nothing significant on the bench there. Moving along to the Burt Churgs versus Alcoholics Anonymous. Scott has the Chicago White Sox as his insignia now. Interesting. Tim, the original projection was 96. Scott, original projection was 80. 132-77 was the final. Tim's team continues to roll in impressive fashion. Cam Newton is back on his roster, and my goodness, does he like being a Burt Churger. 35 points scored, very even across the board. 11 points from his wide receivers and running backs, even though Howard didn't quite show up against Green Bay. Very uncharacteristics. He still got the slack picked up by his special teams, giving him 28 points. And then with Scott, it just, he was kind of throwing a bunch of Hail Marys and hoping something would happen, but not this week. Scott goes to 4-6. Tim goes to 6-4 and is the 5th ranked team in the league. The final game that we'll get into is Car Ramrod versus the Teabaggers. Joe versus Tahir. Tahir, I think, had another bye week. Yep, this was his big bye week. This week, 101-69 was the projection. 94-46 was the final. Joe beats Tahir to move to 8-2. Tahir falls to 6-4. Now that his big bye week is out of the way, he's looking to make his playoff push going forward. He's still in the lead for our division, and we'll break that down real quick before we look at our transactions, and then before we look into games going forward. So, where we stand, the top 4 teams in this order are the Fart Apocalypse, number 1, Braggadocious 1-1 at 2, the Teabaggers at 3, and at the 4 spot is Car Ramrod. So Robin 1, Matt Keyser 2, Tahir 3, Joe 4. Bringing up the rear, we have Tim, who probably has the most realistic chance of making the playoffs out of the other team. So Matt Hughes at 5-5. He does have the division record, but that loss last week to Elliott really hurts him. And then Elliott, moving into that 7 spot, really helped himself. He is in striking distance of the division, and the way things could potentially shake up in these last 3 weeks, could find himself in a tie for first place, in the 3-way tie for first, in which everybody is jockeying with the division records and could come down to points. So we will see what happens there. But if you were to look at the main playoff contenders, you have Fart Apocalypse and Car Ramrod from the He-Man Woman Haters Club. It's pretty much right now just Matt Keyser and the Bad Sports Puns. He would have to really blow it to not make the playoffs and lose to Matt Hughes. But then we have, you could say, a 4-team race with the Roger Elliott division, because I'm still mathematically not out of it, even though I did sell the majority of my team, which was looking pretty darn good. You have 2 teams at 6-4, 1 at 5-5, and then me at 4-6. So, my goodness. This one is going to come down to the wire. So let's go ahead and look at trades. Lots of trades happened this past week. And most notably starting Tuesday. I let it be known on Sunday that I would be selling my team after it looked like Tim wasn't going to lose. And the floodgates, they opened. So the first trade that went through, this is back starting on the 14th, that we'll go into. I'm going to try and break these down. I have my method here in which I was calculating trades, and I'll kind of say how close I feel that they are. Of course, with our league, everything's up to interpretation. And what we think, is or isn't valuable. So this is just my interpretation of the trades that took place. So some people, I might say somebody won the trade, but maybe not by much. It's it could be very close. So nobody get your panties in a fucking bundle here, okay? It's just for fun. So the first trade that went through was, let me make sure I have it up. I'm looking at the right one. Between the Golden Tate Warriors and Fart Apocalypse. So this would be Robin acquiring talent from Matt Hughes to look to make that championship push, which, Robin was saying he may not make moves, but of course, when everybody else is making moves, you got to make something happen. And the trade was Robin sends Jared Goff, a 7th round draft pick, and a 15th round draft pick for Tom Brady, an 11th and a 13th. So this was obvious. Jared Goff had another great game. It was definitely a sell high moment, right? But you are making the trade in hopes that maybe he goes from a good game manager that can capitalize on good matchups to hopefully becoming an elite level quarterback, being in a good offense. So unless this is a trade back at the end of the year, I can't remember all the stipulations. There were so many rentals and things going forward, which we can talk a little bit about after these trades. I can come back around onto the whole rental, which was a part of discussion amongst our group, I must say. But all in all, not a bad trade. I'll break it down in a minute. I'm going to go through some of these other ones. The next one that happened was between me and Matt Keyser. So I send Dez Bryant, Mark Ingram, an 8th round draft pick, and a 10th round draft pick to Matt Keyser for Rashard Matthews, Martavis Bryant, a 2nd and a 5th. So this essentially was Keyser quite obviously going and trying to really maximize his roster. I think that Keyser probably felt a little bit that even though the names look good on his team, the performance hasn't quite been there. He's had some really big weeks. I don't think anybody's denying that. But the fact of the matter is, he's had some really close games, and I think that he wants the blowouts. And looking at the schedules of a lot of my players that they had going forward are very, very good come playoff time. And so Matt, knowing that, I feel wanted to make sure that he was doing something that was more guaranteed. And when you look at what Mark Ingram's been doing, I said it before, I really do think he's going to be a top 4 running back going forward rest of the season. And, this last game, it pretty much showed why. And that was kind of what I was hoping to get out of him a lot earlier in the year. Of course, it didn't happen because the whole stupid Adrian Peterson thing and him taking away, 9 touches, 10 touches a game. It just absolutely ruined everything for the first half of the year. RIP to Mark Ingram owners. But going forward, he just looks to be an absolute workhorse. And then with Dez Bryant comes the security of knowing that you're not. Who knows? He's a great talent. His in terms of tough matchups are pretty much gone. The only other one that he was going to potentially have was with Richard Sherman. But going forward, Richard Sherman with the Achilles, that hasn't been a great defense. Now that they lost their top cover cornerback, their secondary is a little bit banged up. It's a really solid pickup. That's somebody that was kind of, not that you're upset about something that's only going to get you like 10, 11 points, because he's not really a yardage guy. He's mainly a red zone guy right now where he'll get you like 40 yards and a touchdown. But there is a lot of potential right now for bigger games going forward for Dez Bryant. So I think that where Matt's been seeing a lot of fluctuation, I think he's trying to bring that floor up even higher with his team with some of these picks. So I'll break that one down a little bit more in detail. Me obviously getting a 2nd. I didn't have a 2nd round draft pick, so getting that, and then some okay talent with Rashard Matthews. I don't know if we'll keep him in the 5th or not, but he's pretty decent. The next one was between me and Robin. I sent Jay Ajayi a 10th and an 11th for Tyrod Taylor, a 6th and a 7th. It was a good value trade until the next day when Tyrod Taylor got benched. So now it's a really unfavorable trade for me. Super lopsided for Robin. Robin got huge value out of that. I knew he was going to get rid of Tyrod Taylor anyway. Didn't really plan on keeping him. But, I was going to need a quarterback anyway. So I decided I could roll with Tyrod Taylor and maybe keep him next year. I'm hoping he goes somewhere else because he's a really good dual threat quarterback. And it's quite obvious that the freaking Bills are tanking. So just ship him off. You want to ship everybody off anyway, so let him go someplace. The next is, let's see, we have the Golden Tate Warriors dealing with Robin again. Sends Golden Tate and a 10th for a 7th. Ooh. I don't have that one completely broken down, but that's a pretty good trade for Robin. Golden Tate does have some tough matchups, though, in the next few weeks. The next trade, we had the Teabaggers with It Wasn't the Handle, who send Doug Baldwin, Leonard Fournette, and the 6th. That's Marco sending to here, Doug Baldwin, Leonard Fournette, and a 6th. I'm assuming Doug Baldwin is coming back because he has great keeper value. And then Marcos received a second-round draft pick and Willie Snead, which is interesting. Especially since I had a trade with Tahir. Never mind. That involved a second. And unless he's getting Doug Baldwin forever. If he is, then okay. It Wasn't the Handle. Again, trading this time with Joe. He sends the Seattle defense, Brandon Cooks, Zach Ertz, DeMarco Murray, and a 12th round draft pick for the Denver defense, Tyler Lockett, Jordan Reed, and a 5th. I think the big thing there was the 5th. And if you like wide receiver 3s, wide receiver 4s, and Tyler Lockett, he's there too. And then I don't know who's being kept. I mean, I don't know if Zach Ertz is coming back, if he wants to keep him in the 3rd or what. But the final trade that happened, Dak Prescott from Scott. Scott trades with Pat. He sends Dak Prescott to Pat in an 8th for a 6th round draft pick. So won't be breaking those down. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the waiver wire that we had taking place, because waiver wire is always fun. And I got to get this up and going. I got about 30 more minutes to get this done, do a little editing, get it posted. And if anybody wants to listen to a little something before Thursday Night Football, you'll have something to look at. So, looking at waivers, November 15th. That's today. Or yesterday, excuse me. In the AM, this is when the waivers were happening. First, we had It Wasn't the Handle. Pick up Latavius Murray, running back out of Minnesota. Next, we had Braggadocious 1-1. Pick up Baltimore, the Baltimore defense. Next, you had me picking up Jeremy Maclin, wide receiver. I had a ton of claims in. Baltimore defense was one of them. Jeremy Maclin was another one. And this next person was another one. Corey Coleman goes to a team has no name. And then Austin Eckler, the running back for Upside Down and Goal. I'm assuming that's Scott, I guess. No, it's not. I don't know. I don't know who Upside Down and Goal is. When the fuck did this happen? Anyway, somebody picked him up. He had a monster game last week. He had 2 receiving touchdowns and like 100 yards for the Chargers. The Kansas City defense was the next waiver wire pickup. None of these have grades, by the way. Jamison Crowder, Washington wide receiver, was picked up on waivers by It Wasn't the Handle. Also by It Wasn't the Handle, picked up Danny Amendola. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 waivers claimed this past week. A lot of fun there. So free agents all the way from here on out. We had the Arizona defense go to upside down in goal. I got to see who this is. Oh, Matt Hughes. Okay, so he's talking about the upside down world. It's a reference for the popular Netflix show Stranger Things. Geronimo Allison, Green Bay wide receiver, picked up in free agency at 2 a.m. James Conner, the Pittsburgh running back, picked up at 2 a.m. These are all Matt Hughes, these next four. And then Chad Williams, Arizona wide receiver. My brother, the Burt Jergs, at 2:09 a.m. My God, what is everybody doing up? Sleep. Blake Bortles, elite QB, picked up. Followed by Derek Carr at 5:56 in the a.m. by Pat. Eli Manning by Scott. Kai Forbath by Scott. Josh Lambo, the Jacksonville kicking specialist, by Tahir. Jamal Williams, Green Bay running back, by Elliott, who's one of my draft picks. Holler. Rex Burkhead by Car Ramrod. Andy Dalton by me, then dropped for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm going the Fitzmagic. Fuck it. Cincinnati defense, picked up by me. And then Blair Walsh, the Seattle kicker, by Matty. So, there you go. Let's go ahead. Now let's look to week 11. Right now, 4-6 Fighting Sponges against 4-6. It wasn't the handles. I'm facing Marcos. Original, well, I guess the projections right now, 86-80 in favor of Marcos. It's essentially coin flip. Got a touchdowns difference. I need a tight end still, so hopefully I gotta go pick one up. I'll do that. I don't have it. I'll get one. Looking at this one, I'm of course rolling the dice with Ryan Fitzpatrick against Miami. This could completely backfire because of the fact that what if they want to run the ball a buttload? They can either throw it a lot or run it a lot. If they throw it a lot, I like my chances. If not, I'm in trouble. Because I got Fitzpatrick and Mike Evans going back-to-back. Alshon Jeffrey's on the road at Dallas, which is a nice matchup for me. Rashard Matthews at Pittsburgh going tonight. I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to get cold feet and switch him out. I'm not going to. I'm going to see what the man can do. It's going to be ugly, but let's roll the dice. Maybe he gets a touchdown. Alvin Kamara against Washington. Lovett Orleans Darkwa against Kansas City. Not bad. My invisible tight end, Jeremy Maclin against Green Bay, which I like. And then Tucker in Cincinnati. The big five from Marcos. Alex Smith on the road at New York. He's projected at 19. May as well be 19,000 because he's going to tear him up. Tyler Lockett, Crowder, and Amendola going. Joe Mixon and Latavius Murray. If this was like 3 years ago, these would probably be really good lineups. And then Jordan Reed going at tight end with Gio Bernard, Zerlane, and Jacksonville rounding it out. Mariota against Pittsburgh is on the bench for Marcos. Next game, we have Nate Silver-Sith at 5-5 against Pat at 1-9. 7 versus 12. 95-80 is the original projection. Elliott is the heavy favorite, 15 points. Cousins going for Elliott. Derek Carr against New England going for Pat. Cousins on the road at New Orleans. New Orleans been tough. New England improved, but still not that great. Got to give the edge to Pat, obviously. Elliott's big five. He has Landry, Thielen, and Crabtree. Abdullah and Thompson are his running backs. Juju Smith-Schuster, Williams, Westbrook, Drake, and Gallman going for Patrick. Tight end, we have Cook going for Elliott at New England. Ingram at Kansas City. Two very talented individuals with the newly acquired Jamal Williams for Elliott. And then you have Terrence Williams, going for Pat. Coswell going Thursday evening for Elliott. And he has a Kansas City defense going against a lowly New York Football Giants. Butcher going for Pat and the Chicago defense against Detroit. The next game we have is Matt Hughes, the upside down in goals against Big Bree, 5-5 against 2-8, the number 6 versus 11 teams. Projected totals right now 61-50 in favor of Brienne. I'm assuming Matt still has to set his lineup a little bit, but he will do that. Brienne still has to do hers too. She has Carson Wentz on the bench. Definitely probably wants to start him. I think all in all, you'd probably have to say Matt will be the favored in that one once lineups are all set and ready to go. The next game we have is braggadocious 1-1 against the Birchurgs, 7-3 versus 6-4, 126-97 is the projected total in favor of Matthew Keyser. This is a big game for a lot of people involved. Of course, Ezekiel Elliott suspended. Interesting note, I actually didn't go through news and notes in regards to David Johnson. David Johnson got his cast off. Will he be back for the playoffs? There is a chance. Working out stiffness and getting the strength back in the arm and the wrist. I'd probably give him 2 weeks. This week, next week, and then he'll probably be back. Breeze going for Matt. Bortles going for Tim at Cleveland. Bortles with only 14 points. That could be a low projection. Green, Brown, and Bryant going for Matt Keyser. Le'Veon Bell and Melvin Gordon are his running backs. Tim has Thomas, Hopkins, and Fitzgerald. Coleman and Howard are his running backs. Coleman, I think, is set up for a monster game now that he is the back. It's another move that Tim made that initially didn't seem that great, giving up Doug Martin, but now Coleman is the back in Atlanta, and Tim keeps maneuvering himself into RB1s. Coleman is a legit elite level, maybe not elite level, but pretty close to elite level running back with the workload that he's going to be getting. Howard looking to bounce back against a pretty good Detroit defense, but if Tim can hold the water and have Coleman, Howard, and Johnson back, wow, that could be a scary playoff team if Tim can make it in. Gronk at tight end for Keyser, Delaney Walker going tonight for Tim, Mark Ingram in the flex spot for Keyser with Sammy Watkins at Minnesota. That's a tough one for Tim. Tim's got some tough matchups. And then Prater in Baltimore going for Matt. Lutz and Lutz, the LA Rams. There's multiple LA teams going for Tim. The next game we have is Fart Apocalypse versus the Teabaggers. 115-107 in favor of Robin. It's kind of a coin flip, to be honest with you. About 8 points. That's essentially a touchdown. So looking at Robin, he has Tom Brady going against Oakland. Oh my God. Dak Prescott going for Tahir against Philadelphia. The big five for Robin, he has Jones, Shepard, Tate are his wide receivers. McCoy and Hunt at running back. Tahir has Jones Jr., the sometimes explosive Detroit wide receiver, Marvin Jones Jr., Tyreek Hill and Doug Baldwin with Jerick McKinnon and Leonard Fournette, the newly acquired Leonard Fournette, who is facing Cleveland this week. Hasn't been doing too much. He's been out the past 2 games. He came back last week and only got 4.6 points on 17 carries. If there is a get-right game, this would be it. And he has another good matchup in Week 12 against Arizona, but then it gets a little tough after that. Tight ends, we have Hunter Henry for Robin, Travis Kelce for Tahir. If there is, it wouldn't really be an upset. Like I said, it's a pretty darn close game. Tahir has some pretty good matchups. Robin's going to need this one. This with the Fournette acquisition, Doug Baldwin, stuff like that. This was, this went from somewhat of a runaway to now Robin's in a dogfight. And this is definitely one game in which he is really hoping doesn't come up and bite him in the butt, so to speak. The flexes are Jay Ajayi at Dallas, only projected at 9 points. He could have a monster game. And then Dion Lewis at Oakland for Tahir, also hoping for a big game out of him. Elliott in New Orleans, special teams for Robin. Lambeau in Philadelphia for Tahir. Doug Martin on the bench right now for Robin. Doug Martin, of course, facing Miami. And then the last and final game, Alcoholics Anonymous versus Car Ramrod. Scott versus Joe. 108-73 is the projection. The heavily favored Joe Car Ramrods. He's got to like his matchup this week, especially with what happened with Robin and Tahir bulking up his roster a little bit. It's got to feel good to have a nice, easy week, presumably, with Russell Wilson going for him, who's been hot. Eli Manning going for Scott, and the big five for Joe. He has Diggs, Cooks, Sanders, Gurley, and Murray. Scott has Ted Ginn, Corey Davis, Nelson Aguilar, Theo Riddick, and Chris Ivory going. Tight ends, Ertz for Joe. Big pickup for him. Austin Hooper for Scott, who a lot of people like going this week in Seattle. And J.J. Nelson at the flex. Burkhead at the flex for Joe. Special teams, Matt Bryant and the Seattle defense for Joe. Kyle Forbath in Detroit. Joe has his favorites, and he can't quit them no matter how hard he tries. Look at the Seattle defense. The man loves it. He loves his stalwart. The ones that he loves going back to the well. They gave him the success before. He always wants it again. Can't get enough. Can't get enough. But that is week 11 in the books. Man, this is, like I said, we have 3 weeks left. Can't say that after this week the writing is on the wall. Still very, very competitive. Looking at schedules going forward, Robin suddenly in a dogfight with Tahir. He has me and Brienne week 12 and 13. Me with the recently dumped lineups. Suddenly not as scary now that I don't have marking room and now that I have. The thing is, if Tim ends up, if Tim ends up losing another game outside of the braggadocious game, I'll be very, very sad, because then that means I would have had a chance, and I had a potentially very good team going forward. So anyway, looking at some of these playoff implications, Robin, really tough game right now with Tahir. Hopefully 2 easier games with me and Brienne on week 12 and 13, and then Joe in week 14. Joe on the flip side, Scott looking like a little bit of a cakewalk. Matt Hughes, who sold some of his assets, all of a sudden isn't as scary. Marcos, who sold, now all of a sudden isn't that scary anymore. So what went from a potentially difficult schedule now looks like he has the easy road in the playoffs, and Robin has the tough road in the playoffs. I keep getting this damn advertisement popping up. Sorry about that. So it's crazy. Just a week ago, we were saying Joe had the hard road in, Robin had the easy one. Now Robin looks like he might have the hard road in, and Joe has the easy one. It could be one of those deals where if Tim goes and wins out, and I don't know. I still think that Robin would end up being the 4th team in. That's what I think. So let's go ahead and look at schedules going forward. Tahir has kind of the same thing after all these teams sold. Robin, tough one. Marcos, not as intimidating anymore. Then he does face Tim and Elliott in weeks 14 and 15. Tim's got a tough one. He's got Braggadocious this week. Pat shouldn't be that hard, but then Tahir in week 13. And then me, as much as I always try and play the spoiler, probably is going to be too difficult for him. Elliot, though, the dark horse, we definitely got to... I really got to get this to just stop playing. You hush up. Elliot going forward. Game against Pat. Definitely not going to be much of a challenge there. He does have Braggadocious 1-1 in week 12. I'm no longer as scary in week 13 than Tahir in week 14. So at worst, let's just say Elliot loses to Braggadocious in week 12, but wins the other ones. You know, he could this fucking this advertisement like he's going. He could finish at 8-6. We could have a number of teams finish at 8-6 in the same division, as we talked about before. My gosh, it's just absolute insanity. So, I hope you guys enjoy this. I got to get this up. Sorry for the rushed episode. Got to give you guys something. Maybe we'll try and get somebody else hopping on and doing stuff, or if I'm busy. Thank you guys so much for listening. Good luck in week 11. Have fun. Share, like, love, tell your friends, yada, yada, yada. And thank you for listening.